Hey guys, today we are looking at the quadratic formula, and I know some of you have been dying to get to the quadratic formula, so I'm excited to do this one with you today. So, I do have a good story that I heard about the quadratic formula. I'll share it with you in class. Some of you have been singing the song already, so we know the quadratic formula is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. What you probably haven't seen is how to get there. So we are doing a quick proof on how exactly we get to the quadratic formula, and to do that we are going to use completing the square. So I'm going to first move my c value over. So I have ax squared plus bx plus blank is equal to the opposite of c plus blank. Now, that a value out front, we need to factor out. So x squared, then I have b over a, x plus blank, and then I have that equal to the opposite of c plus, now I need to multiply by a, whatever it is that I put in that blank. Okay, so now I need to do b over a over 2, or b over 2a, quantity squared. So I get b squared over 4a squared. That's what goes inside that blank. So b squared over 4a squared. And here it's b squared over 4a squared. So then on this side it looks like still the a out front, and then I have x plus b over 2a, quantity squared, is equal to the opposite of c plus. Now that a that's out front is on top of a fraction bar, that's a over 1, so I have a on top and then I have two a's on the bottom. So that means those will cancel out. One of those a's on the bottom will cancel out with that a on top. So I have b squared over 4a at this point. Okay, so now we want to try to get that x plus 2 quantity squared. We're going to get that by itself so that we can start to solve for x. So the first thing we need to do is divide by a on both sides. So then I have x plus b over 2a, quantity squared, is equal to the opposite of c over a. I'm going to go ahead and separate this out, plus b squared over 4a squared. So when I divided by a, that put that a squared back down there. Okay, so now probably the easiest thing to do is to work with this piece on the right. So if I have a and I have 4a squared on the right in the denominator. If I want the denominator of the left-hand side to also be 4a squared, I need to multiply by 4a over 4a so that they will match. And I haven't changed it since I'm multiplying by the same thing on the top and the bottom. So I have x plus b over 2a, quantity squared, is equal to negative 4ac over 4a squared plus b squared over 4a squared. So I can put them both over 4a squared. Okay, now since we have just that squared on the left-hand side, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I have x plus b over 2a is equal to, And I'm going to go ahead and switch this around because hopefully it's going to start looking familiar to you. I'm going to do square root on top, b squared minus 4ac, I just flipped that around, over the square root of 4a squared. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of a squared is a. And we have that plus or minus out front since we took the square root of both sides. So now we're going to subtract b over 2a from both sides. And I have x equals the opposite of b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Well, since they have the same denominator, we can put them together. So x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So that is how the quadratic formula came about. We solved for x using completing the square. It wasn't just a magical formula that we found that worked. So if you ever forget the quadratic formula, you can use that method to solve, or you can just memorize the quadratic formula. I do have a handout for you with that written out as well. Okay, solve 2x squared plus 9x minus 5 equals 0. And we're solving using the quadratic formula today. So a is your value in front of your x squared, so it's 2. B is 9. And c is negative 5, since we have a minus 5 there. So we have x equals the opposite of b, so negative 9, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 9 squared, minus 4 times 2 is our a value, times negative 5 is our c value, all over 2 times 2 is our a value. So x equals negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 81 plus, and we get, because there's negative times negative, so we get 40 there, over 2 times 2 is 4. So x equals negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 121 over 4. X equals negative 9 plus or minus 11 over 4. So x equals negative 9 plus 11 is 2 over 4. So x equals 1/2. X equals negative 9 minus 11 is negative 20 over 4. So x is negative 5. So x equals 1/2, or x is negative 5. All right. One way we can test out different, without doing the full quadratic formula, we can decide what kind of answers we're going to have and how many, is by using the discriminant, and that's the value that's under the radical. So b squared minus 4ac. 3 different options here. We can have a positive, we can have a 0, or we can have a negative number. So when we have a positive value under the discriminant, we have 2 solutions that are real. When we have a 0 under the radical, we get 1 solution, and it's also real. When we have a negative value under the radical, we have no real solutions, but we have, so 0 real, but we have 2 that are imaginary. And that should make sense because we have a negative under the radical, then we'll have the square root of a negative number, and that gives you an I value. So if you look here, let's just look at the discriminant. So b squared minus 4ac. So my b value here is -1 squared minus 4 times a -5 times a +2. So I have -1 squared is 1, and then I get plus, and that would be 40 more, so I get 41. That's a positive value, so I know I have 2 real solutions. So just a quicker check to find out, does this even give me values? Maybe if you're trying to graph, you can throw that in the calculator real quick and see, okay, so it should cross the y-axis. One thing we will talk about is using vertical motion. We've talked about this a little bit, but the -16 is that gravity value, t squared, plus, this is new that we have an initial velocity. So v sub 0 is initial velocity. So how we initially threw whatever it is we're doing. And then h sub 0 is the initial height. T, of course, is going to be your time. This h is your final height. So we're solving for some piece there. But we'll talk about that more later on. So if you have questions about quadratic formula or anything else, please come see me. Otherwise, I'll see you in class.